Today we delve into the shadows with 5 true dark family secret horror stories that will send chills down your spine. Families are complicated, aren't they? We love them, we cherish them, but sometimes they harbor secrets. Dark secrets that whisper through generations, secrets that claw their way out from the shadows and into the light. These are not tales for the faint of heart. These are stories of real families, haunted by their pasts, living with the consequences of choices made long ago. Are you ready to face the darkness? Then step closer, if you dare, and listen to the whispers of the past. Our first story takes us to a quaint, unassuming town much like any other. It centers around a family heirloom, a beautiful antique locket passed down through generations of the Davies family. To the eye, it was a thing of beauty, silver and etched with delicate flowers, a symbol of family history and enduring love. But the Davies family bore a secret. The locket you see came with a darkness, a presence that clung to it like a shroud. It began subtly. The new owner of the locket, a young woman named Clara Davies, would feel cold spots in the house, a chill that seemed to follow her wherever she went. She started to hear whispers at night, faint murmuring just on the edge of her hearing. Then the nightmares began, vivid, terrifying dreams of a woman pale and gaunt, her eyes burning with a cold fire, begging for something, pleading. Clara dismissed it at first as stress, an overactive imagination, but the occurrences intensified. Objects moved around on their own. Shadows seemed to writhe and twist in the corner of her vision. One night, she woke with a gasp, the distinct feeling of icy fingers closing around her throat, the weight of the locket a searing brand against her skin. Panic set in. Clara began researching her family history, poring over dusty journals and faded photographs. She discovered a diary entry penned by a distant ancestor that spoke of a great aunt, a woman scorned and abandoned who had cursed the locket with her dying breath, vowing that it would forever hold her pain and anger. The locket, once a cherished symbol of her lineage, became a source of terror for Clara. She tried to get rid of it, to throw it away, to bury it, but it always found its way back to her, appearing on her bedside table, in her purse, even tucked into her coat pocket. The presence grew stronger, the whispers louder, the nightmares more vivid. Desperate, Clara sought help from a paranormal investigator, a woman known for her ability to communicate with the other side. The investigator confirmed what Clara had already begun to suspect. The locket was indeed haunted by the vengeful spirit of her great-aunt. The spirit, she explained, was tethered to the locket, unable to move on, forever bound to the object of her anguish. The only way to break the curse, the investigator warned, was to find the remains of the great-aunt and lay them to rest properly. This sent Clara on a quest to an abandoned family plot, hidden deep in the woods, where she finally found the unmarked grave of the scorned woman. With the help of the investigator, Clara performed a ritual, a heartfelt apology, and a promise to honor her great-aunt's memory. As Clara placed a single white rose on the grave, a cold wind swept through the trees, and she could have sworn she heard a sigh, a sound of release, as if the spirit had finally found peace. The locket in her pocket felt lighter, its weight no longer a burden but a reminder of a past laid to rest. Our next tale takes us to a sprawling Victorian home on the outskirts of Salem, Massachusetts. The Carter family had lived there for generations, the house a silent sentinel to their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and their secrets. But beneath the grand facade, beneath the polished floors and the ornate chandeliers, lay a darkness, a secret buried deep in the bowels of the house, in the cold, damp confines of the basement. The basement was a place of shadows and whispers, a place where the air felt heavy and the silence was broken only by the creaking of the old house settling around it. It was a place the Carter children were forbidden to go, a place where their parents warned monsters lurked. But children, as they often do, are drawn to the forbidden. One humid summer afternoon, driven by curiosity and a dare, the youngest of the Carter children, a boy named Daniel, decided to venture into the basement's depths. He crept down the creaking wooden stairs, the air growing colder, the smell of damp earth and mildew filling his nostrils. The only light came from a small dusty window at the far end of the basement, casting long dancing shadows on the dirt floor. He could hear the skittering of rats and the drip, drip, drip of water from a leaky pipe, each sound amplified in the oppressive silence. As he ventured deeper into the basement, he stumbled upon a section hidden behind a wall of decaying boxes and old furniture. Pushing aside the cobwebs and dust, he revealed a small wooden door, its paint peeling, a rusty padlock hanging askew. Curiosity overwhelming his fear, Daniel managed to pry open the lock. The door creaked open with a groan, revealing a small, dirt-floored room. The air inside was thick with the smell of decay and something else, something metallic and cloying. As his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he made out the shape of a small wooden table in the center of the room. On the table lay a collection of objects, a rusty knife, a pile of yellowed bones, and a leather-bound book. Daniel cautiously approached the table, his heart pounding in his chest. He picked up the book, its cover cold and damp beneath his fingers. As he opened it, a wave of dizziness washed over him, and the air seemed to crackle with a strange energy. The pages were filled with faded ink, strange symbols, and diagrams he couldn't decipher. Suddenly he heard a noise behind him, a low growl that seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of the house. He spun around, his blood turning to ice. Standing in the doorway, its eyes glowing in the darkness, was a large, shadowy figure, its form shifting and swirling like smoke. Daniel screamed and dropped the book, scrambling back in terror. The figure lunged towards him, its claws outstretched. He threw his hands up to protect himself, but the creature passed right through him, its touch sending a jolt of icy fear through his body. He scrambled to his feet and ran, his mind reeling, the image of the creature seared into his memory. He burst out of the basement, his screams echoing through the house, the book and the secrets it held left behind in the darkness. Daniel's story was met with skepticism by his parents. They dismissed it as a child's overactive imagination, but they could see the terror in his eyes, the way he refused to go near the basement again. The secret of the basement, the dark entity that lurked within, remained a chilling mystery, a silent threat hidden beneath the surface of their seemingly ordinary lives. Chapter 3. The Cursed Family Portrait. Our third story takes us across the ocean to a crumbling manor house on the windswept moors of northern England. The Blackwood family, once proud and wealthy, had fallen from grace, their fortune dwindling, their name whispered with a mix of pity and fear. The locals would tell you it was all because of the portrait, the cursed family portrait that hung in the grand hall, its eyes seeming to follow you, judging, condemning. The portrait was an imposing thing, a life-size depiction of the family patriarch, a stern-faced man in a powdered wig and velvet coat. He seemed to exude an air of arrogance and cruelty, his eyes, rendered with unsettling realism, holding a glint that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to meet their gaze. The curse, it was said, began shortly after the patriarch's untimely demise. His wife, a beautiful but fragile woman, claimed he had become obsessed with the portrait, spending hours in its presence, talking to it, arguing with it. Then, one stormy night, the patriarch was found dead in the grand hall, his eyes wide with terror, his face contorted in a silent scream, the portrait looming over him like a judge passing sentence. The wife swore the portrait was to blame, that her husband's spirit had been trapped within the canvas, his rage and resentment bleeding out to curse all who possessed it. Her claims were dismissed as grief-stricken ravings, but as the years passed, and tragedy after tragedy befell the Blackwood family, the rumours of the curse took root. Each heir to the Blackwood name seemed to meet an untimely and often gruesome end. One drowned in the family well, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. Another perished in a fire, his screams echoing through the night as the flames consumed him. A young woman, driven mad by grief and fear, took her own life, her laughter echoing through the empty halls before the rope went taut. The portrait became a macabre heirloom passed down through the generations, each owner hoping to break the curse, only to succumb to the same tragic fate. The once grand manor house fell into disrepair. Its once vibrant tapestries faded and threadbare, its furniture covered in dust sheets, its inhabitants haunted by the ever-present gaze of the portrait. One by one, the Blackwood family line dwindled until only one remained, a young woman named Amelia. Having grown up on tales of the curse, Amelia had always been wary of the portrait, refusing to allow it in her presence. She had it locked away in the attic, hidden behind a wall of bricks, hoping to sever the family's connection to its malevolent influence. But the portrait, it seemed, was not so easily ignored. One night, as a storm raged outside, lashing the old house with wind and rain, Amelia awoke to the sound of her name being whispered. The voice was low and raspy, filled with a cold fury, and it seemed to be coming from the attic. Fear coiled in her stomach as she crept up the creaking stairs, her heart pounding against her ribs. As she approached the bricked-up wall, the whispering grew louder, accompanied by the sound of scratching, as if claws were being dragged across the other side. With trembling hands, Amelia began to dismantle the wall, brick by brick. As she removed the last brick, a blast of icy air hit her, carrying with it the stench of decay and something else, something ancient and evil. The portrait, its frame cracked and its canvas ripped, lay on the floor, the eyes of the patriarch seeming to burn with a malevolent light. And standing before it, his back to Amelia, was a figure cloaked in shadows, his head bowed, his voice a low growl as he spoke to the portrait. As Amelia watched in horror, the figure turned, and for a fleeting moment she saw his face, a grotesque mockery of the patriarch in the portrait, his eyes burning with a hatred that chilled her to the bone. Then, as quickly as he appeared, the figure vanished, along with the cursed portrait, leaving Amelia standing alone in the darkness, the echoes of his laughter ringing in her ears, a chilling reminder of the darkness that haunted her family line. Chapter 4. The Hidden Attic Room. This story takes us to the heartland of America, to a farmhouse passed down through generations of the Miller family. The farmhouse, with its wide porch and sprawling fields, held the weight of history, the laughter of children and the comforting scent of baking bread. But it also held a secret, a room concealed behind a false wall in the attic, a room that whispered of forgotten tragedies and unspeakable acts. It all began when Thomas Miller, the youngest son, returned home after years away. His grandfather, the family patriarch, had passed away, leaving the farmhouse to be divided amongst his descendants. As Thomas began the daunting task of sorting through his grandfather's belongings, he noticed something peculiar about the attic. The attic, like most attics, was a treasure trove of memories, filled with dusty trunks, cobweb-laden furniture, and boxes overflowing with the remnants of a life well lived. But as Thomas delved deeper, he noticed an inconsistency in the layout of the room. One wall seemed to jut out at an odd angle, its wallpaper not quite matching the rest of the attic. Driven by curiosity and a nagging sense that something wasn't right, Thomas began to investigate. He pressed against the suspicious wall, his knuckles rapping against the aged wallpaper. To his surprise, the wall gave way slightly, revealing a hollow space behind it. With a surge of adrenaline coursing through him, he tore down the wallpaper, exposing a hidden doorway concealed behind the false wall. The door, made of rough-hewn planks, creaked open as if disturbed after decades of slumber. The air inside was stale and thick with the scent of dust and decay, a chill settling over Thomas despite the summer heat. As his eyes adjusted to the dimness, he made out the outline of a small, cramped room, barely large enough to stand up in. A single dusty window cast a sliver of light into the room, illuminating the unsettling objects within. There was a rocking chair, its seat worn smooth as if from countless hours of use. A child's doll lay discarded in the corner, its porcelain face cracked, its eyes seeming to stare at Thomas with an unsettling intensity. And then there was the writing on the walls. Scrawled across the walls in what appeared to be charcoal were words, phrases, and disturbing drawings. The writing was erratic, frantic, the words themselves a jumbled mix of pleas for help, declarations of love, and chilling threats. It was clear that whoever had been trapped in this room had been driven to the brink of madness. As Thomas examined the room more closely, his heart pounded in his chest, a sense of dread washing over him. He found a small wooden chest tucked under the eaves. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed letters and faded photographs, was a diary. The diary belonged to a young woman named Sarah, Thomas's great-aunt, who had mysteriously disappeared from the farmhouse when she was just a teenager. The entries were filled with fear and desperation. Sarah wrote of being locked in the attic room by her own father, a cruel and controlling man who had deemed her unfit to be a part of their family. She wrote of her loneliness, her terror, her dwindling hope of ever escaping her prison. The entries became increasingly incoherent as time went on, her words spiraling into a vortex of madness and despair. Then the entries stopped abruptly, leaving Thomas with a chilling sense of unease. The discovery of the hidden room and Sarah's diary cast a dark shadow over the Miller family's history. The once comforting walls of the farmhouse now seemed to whisper with Sarah's anguish, her pain echoing through the generations. Thomas, haunted by his great-aunt's tragic fate, vowed to uncover the truth of her disappearance, to give a voice to the silent screams that seemed to emanate from the hidden attic room. Chapter 5. The Whispering Walls. Our final tale takes us to the bustling city of New Orleans, a city steeped in history, music, and a darkness that lingers beneath its vibrant surface. The Lefebvre family, known for their contributions to the city's rich musical heritage, had a secret, a darkness that clung to their family home, a darkness that whispered from the very walls. The house, a grand old mansion in the heart of the French Quarter, had been in the Lefebvre family for generations. It was filled with the echoes of their triumphs and tragedies, their laughter and their tears, their music and their secrets. But for as long as anyone could remember, the house had also been plagued by strange and unsettling occurrences. Footsteps echoed down empty hallways, disembodied voices whispered from the shadows, and objects moved on their own, as if guided by unseen hands. But the most unsettling phenomenon was the whispering. It started subtly at first, a faint murmuring that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The whispers were quiet, almost indiscernible but persistent, like the rustling of silk dresses or the hushed conversations of long-dead spirits. As time went on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving themselves into the fabric of the house. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, whispering secrets, spinning tales of love and loss, of betrayal and revenge. The Lefebvre family, at first unnerved by the whispers, tried to ignore them, to pretend they weren't there. But the whispers were relentless, seeping into their dreams, their thoughts, their very souls. One by one, the family members began to change. They became withdrawn, paranoid, haunted by the whispers that followed them wherever they went. The house, once filled with music and laughter, became shrouded in an oppressive silence, broken only by the constant murmuring of the walls. Desperate for answers, the Lefebvre family sought the help of a renowned paranormal investigator. The investigator, a woman with a deep connection to the spiritual realm, spent days studying the house, her fingers trailing over the cold stone walls, her ears attuned to the whispers that permeated every corner. What she discovered sent chills down the spines of the Lefebvre family. The house, she explained, was built on a site of great tragedy. Centuries ago, a fire had swept through the city, claiming the lives of countless souls, including those of a family who had once lived on that very spot. The whispers, she revealed, were the tormented voices of the fire's victims, trapped within the walls, their pain and suffering echoing through time. The investigator warned the Lefebvre family that the whispers were not malevolent, but they were powerful. They fed on fear and despair, growing stronger with every manifestation. The only way to silence the whispers, she explained, was to acknowledge their pain, to honor their memory, and to offer them peace. And so the Lefebvre family, guided by the investigator, held a ceremony in the heart of their home. They lit candles, played music, and shared stories of the fire and its victims, their voices mingling with the whispers, offering solace and understanding. As the last notes of music faded into the silence, the whispers seemed to soften, to lose their insistent edge. The house was never completely silent, but the whispers were no longer a source of terror. They became a reminder of the past, of the lives lost and the lessons learned. The Lefebvre family, forever changed by their encounter with the whispering walls, learned to coexist with the spirits of their home. Their music now a tribute to the souls lost but never forgotten.